Let's try two more examples where we solve by factoring. Now, this one, once again, I want it to equal 0. So I'm going to minus 4 to both sides, so then I get my 0, because then I can use my 0 product property. And over here I have x squared minus 4. Now, this is an interesting problem, and here's why. Let's say I wanted to write the number 507. I wanted to write down 507. And I decided I was going to do it like that. 507. Well, you'd say immediately, Mrs. Johnson, you forgot the 0. Yeah, but 0 means nothing. So why do I need the 0 if 0 is nothing? Well, you need 0 as a placeholder. That placeholder becomes really important. Even though 0 is nothing, we need it there as a placeholder. Well, same thing right here. I usually have a middle term right here. This time I don't. So I need a placeholder. So I'm going to put that placeholder there where I normally have a middle term, 0x. Now, side note right here, if I had something like x squared plus 2x equals 0, this one you would not need a placeholder plus 0. I don't need a placeholder for that one because this problem is a GCF problem. So I can look at what do they all have in common. They have an x. So I take it out. And then I can set both of these equal to 0, just like the last ones, and solve. So if you're missing the constant at the end, you don't need a placeholder. If you're missing something in the middle, you do need a placeholder. So I add that placeholder in for the number in the middle, and now I do my simple way of factoring, so -4, and I need two numbers that would multiply to -4 and add to 0. So that's going to be -2 and +2. So I have my parentheses, and I'm going to have -2 plus 2. Now I can use my 0 product property, set them each equal to 0, because either the first one equals 0 or the second one equals 0. And then solve, so I get x equals 2 and x equals -2. And those are my answers. Okay, last problem we're going to try as a class. And this one's a little weird. And here's why. What is this problem missing that the rest of the problems had? Well, it's missing an equal sign. So right here, I actually can't solve this problem for anything because there's no equals in that. That's the difference between an expression versus an equation. An equation always has an equal sign. An expression is only one part of the equation. So either one side or the other. So this would be an expression, meaning I can't solve for it at all. But let's do a different kind of problem that you might see on the ACT or on your test. Let's say instead it looked like this. It looked like y equals and then this equation. And then the problem said find the zeros, or it might say x-intercepts of this equation. Anytime you see something like that, find the zeros or find the x-intercepts, what it's meaning is set the equation equal to 0. So this wording means what we've been doing. That's why it says find the zeros. You set it equal to 0. Now I'm going to rephrase this so that it's in descending order. Now I factor. Check for a GCF. I don't have one. Nothing they all have in common. So now this one is our more complicated method of factoring because I have a number in front of x. So I'm going to multiply those two to give me a negative 40. Now I need a number that multiplies to negative 40 and adds to 3. So that's going to be 8 and negative 5. So 8 times negative 5 gives me my negative 40. 8 plus negative 5 gives me my positive 3. And now remember, since this is the more complicated one, I have to copy that first term and divide by my two numbers. And now I look for what they have in common. Well, that first one, it doesn't have anything in common, so I'm done with that. That's my first one. The second one, they have a 5 in common, so I'm going to take a 5 out of each of them. And remember, when I say take out, I actually mean divide. So I'm going to divide each of these by 5. So 5x divided by 5 is just x. And then negative 5 divided by 5 is a negative 1. Our 5's cancel on top and bottom, so I'm left with an x on top and a negative 1 on bottom. So that tells me my second parenthesis is going to be x minus 1. And both of those are equal to 0. Now I can apply my zero product property. So either the first one equals 0 or the second one equals 0. And I'm going to solve those out. So I get 5x equals negative 8. Divide by 5, so I get x equals negative 8/5. I'll write it over here so we have a little more room. And this one plus 1, so x equals 1. And those are my two solutions for that one. Okay, so there's all of that. If you find this homework page, your homework is 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you can get started on that. And then don't forget your Canvas homework that has the little computer icon on Canvas.